Well, hey, everybody, we are back for another week of encouraging you. We know that for some of you, it's been a great week. For many of us, it's been a pretty challenging week. But we hope that this 10-minute conversation that I shared with my friend Denise is encouraging. What I've really appreciated, so many of you have reached back to me and just said that they listen, that they found it encouraging, that you're taking breaks when this gets posted so that you can listen. And it's just reminding you that you're not the only one, and you're not experiencing something that anybody else isn't experiencing too. We're in this together. If this has been helpful for you, here's an encouragement. This is posted on Facebook. Write a comment in there if you like it, if it's encouraging, or better yet, ask us a question. That gives us some things to think about and things we can talk about the next time we get together. Today, we are going to talk about fatigue, frustration, and faithfulness in the winter of a pandemic. It's supposed to be spring, but right now it's snowing. It snowed a lot last night. Denise, the weather affects us, doesn't it?
It does. You know, we are very complex people. Our immune systems, endocrine systems, neurocognitive systems, our metabolic systems. We are wonderfully and fearfully made. And this information coming in externally and internally, our lack of touch and the weather, just in isolation, it's really starting to wear us down because we depend on some of that to keep us kind of steady and hopeful.
So did you notice this week when you were talking with clients and even in yourself and your own relationships, a shift with the weather going back to being cold for a week?
I did. And add on to that, we went through Easter. We have the privilege of celebrating with my daughter-in-law's family. So we might have 35 or 40 people at their home. And everybody brings something and we hug each other and it's a great time. And this time it was two, my husband and myself.
Yep.
Granted, we got Meals on Wheels from our kids, but very different. And I think that affected everybody, a sense of this is really not going away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the amount of despair and cynicism started to rise. I think if you notice nationally, there was some people protesting these stay-at-home ordinances. People are sick of it and frustrated. Right. That doesn't mean they can change it. That doesn't mean that it's going to go away just because they're frustrated, but they're struggling to cope. So can we talk a bit about coping mechanisms? How do we cope with things we can't control?
Yes, because you're absolutely right. This is very much like a grieving process. And we need to kind of go back to the basics. And for Christians, it's God first. I think we start there. I love what you've really spearheaded. We've got a lot of options at Christ Community Church through the Facebook and the podcasts, and we need to utilize those first and foremost. I noticed that the other day I went into work, not to see people, but just get work done. And I always listen on my ride to work for about 15 minutes, a Christian radio station that has pretty upbeat music. And when I pull into that parking lot, I'm ready. And I did that on the way to work, and then I realized I haven't been doing that since we've been on lockdown. And I miss that. I still listen to a radio, but just that music, that loss, that routine. So, yeah.
So what I heard you say, part of a good coping mechanism is to get simple and go back to those sustaining rhythms or routines that you would normally do. They might be adjusted or modified because you might be at home more, but do some of those basic things. What are some unhealthy coping mechanisms that people tend to go to, especially when they're at a place of fatigue? The thing they're coping with is going on far longer than they thought.
Yeah, the first thing that happens, and I think we have to put back in place, is our routine. Because when the routine gets lost, then people are staying up till midnight, 1 o'clock, sleeping till 10, 11. We're seeing that with the kids more, the e-work, everything's just kind of going down the drain. So we need to get our routines back in shape. Because we all kind of thought this would be short term, and it's getting old. So that's a good place to start, is with the routine organized again.
Yeah. I wrote down when you were saying that when a routine gets lost, people get lost.
Hmm.
We kind of lose
Yeah,
track of ourselves.
yeah, we do. People aren't getting dressed. I'm hearing about people in their pajamas till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and normally this would never happen. And if we as adults kind of start falling apart, our kids are going to,
Yeah.
because they're looking to us. This might be tangential, but I went back and started writing some verses from the Bible that have always been uplifting to me. And, or I've even gone in the back of my Bible, where the topics are, because I can't memorize every verse in the Bible,
Sure.
and wrote some verses, and I put them around a mirror so that when I wake up in the morning, I'm kind of filling myself with that a little more than that this is never going to end, or I can't do anything about it. This is where we need to lean in, I think, to our faith more.
Sure. Well, I've heard you say, just now putting it together, you're going back to things that have helped you in the past.
Yeah.
So one way to think about how do I sustain myself in this winter of a pandemic is, what are the things that were meaningful to you in the past, and reincorporating those and adding those. An example for me was this week I felt pretty frustrated a couple different days. Had important meetings on Zoom, just like this, trying to get the system together and planning for the future, and took a break. Actually, and I journaled. And a thought that came to me while I was journaling was that when you run a marathon, and you start to get fatigued, you have to start stopping.
Oh,
And so I just start stopping to stretch and start stopping to refuel, and those kind of things when you run a marathon. And part of what I'm having to do, is I notice in myself, is I have to stop and take thinking breaks. I have to stop and take soul breaks. And maybe if you're listening to this or watching, an encouragement for you is, it's okay to refuel, to reload yourself, to re-engage. This is longer than any of us had hoped it would be.
it's more. It's even more than it's okay. It's mandatory. It's necessary to do that, and not to slide into the regrets. We can't do much about yesterday, but we can do a lot about today.
Yeah.
And some people are regretting um, job choices, didn't save enough money, just all kinds of different things. And this is actually a good time to rethink. Um, how do we want to see it, but not beat yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of us beating ourselves up right now that we didn't do something or didn't plan ahead, or maybe our job changed and now it's our fault.
Right,
Um, and so the inner voice can get really loud when there's not other things going on and there's not a lot of positivity. And so
yeah.
just, I think, a public service announcement to anybody listening, if you're very, very discouraged, if you are at the end of your rope, you need to reach out. And it's not wrong for you to reach out. That's why you're a part of community. So if you're a part of our church, feel free to reach out to us. If you have a different church, please reach out to them, or a therapist. Get some help, because this is hard.
Mhm. You're right, and there's no shame in that. If we break our leg, we go to a doctor. We don't try to set it ourselves. And really, I think Christ Church you've done an amazing job. There's so many resources. Our small group, I don't know what we would do without our small group. I see we even have a link for that. People could get involved in prayer groups or small groups. It's important.
Well, so let's use those last two thoughts you just had, Denise, because I think they're important. One, people are experiencing regret, and you can also celebrate the things that are sustaining you. So maybe right now you are looking at your life and saying, man, I wish I had some things in place that aren't in place. They would help this. I tell people all the time, if you don't have it in place before the tragedy, when the tragedy comes, there's nothing to sustain you. So maybe right now you have a bunch of free time and you're thinking, I wish I had a stronger community. Cool, great, important, good insight. What are you going to do to plan to get that going forward?
Perfect.
Or maybe you want a closer relationship with God. This is the time to practice. This is the time to jump into a Bible study. We have digital discipleship groups we're trying right now. There's other resources out there. Do now what you want so that you are prepared for the future. But don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's brilliant. It's really about, how can I handle this? What can I do? Not what can't I do?
Yeah.
And getting outside, can I just say, any way, anyhow, any place. I think when it was warmer, we saw people outside. You actually saw people and could wave at them. But even just getting outside is really important. It kind of refreshes the brain. And doing exactly what you're saying, trying to figure out what can we do instead
Yeah.
of what isn't going to work or what did I do wrong.
Yeah,
You know?
I told Denise before the call started with that we recorded it that I woke up early in the middle of the night and was up for a couple of hours thinking. And one of the thoughts that came to me was this disappointment that my kids didn't get to do t-ball and softball this year, and they were excited about that. And then I kind of pulled back and thought, but why don't I just make Tuesday nights t-ball night? You know,
Yeah, right.
why don't I schedule something like that and say to my kids, hey, the league's going to start. There's only 2 kids in the league and it's you guys. And unfortunately, your mom and your dad are your coach, but we're going to be great coaches and let's
Right.
make games. And, you know, again, try to return to some normalcy. What can I do? Not what can't I do? But we would encourage you, be creative in this moment.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true. I think that, you know, and I would say this too. A lot of what we hear in therapy, you coaching your kids, just the 2 of you, that will be a memory they will remember when they come to see, and not that they're going to come to see me in therapy, but when
Oh, they
adults
definitely
come,
will be coming to see a therapist at some point in their life.
it's, it's, it's those memories where their parents spend time with them, or grandparent, or that will be a real blessing to them, and they will remember that as a positive.
Well, Denise, you're a blessing to me, and this is always a fun call. I joke that I get free therapy every week, and hopefully we get to share with some other people. But this is great. We look forward to doing it again next week.
Thanks. Be well. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.